Australians love cars. There are more than 21 million vehicles on Australia's roads, and the vast majority run on petrol or diesel, making transport a huge contributor to Australia's carbon emissions. Less than 1% of Australia's cars are electric vehicles, and our top sellers are all big, fuel-loving utes. Changing that could be key to Australia meeting its climate ambitions. But to do that, Australians are going to need to be convinced EVs are worth it. And two big barriers are cost and the limited range of cars available. The federal government has put together a policy aimed at tackling both. Australia will soon be getting a new vehicle efficiency standard. It's a confusing name for a complicated policy. It applies to car manufacturers. Think companies like Toyota, Mazda, Volkswagen and Ford. Those manufacturers have an emissions limit placed on them, and that limit applies to all the cars they sell in Australia. Let's say that limit is 150 grams of carbon per kilometre. Car companies can keep selling big cars that are over that limit, but they have to also sell more cars under that limit to make up the gap. If they can't keep their average below that limit for the year, they'll face penalties, or need to buy credits off other, greener manufacturers. Over time, that cap will keep getting lower, meaning companies need to keep selling cleaner cars to stay under it. The idea is to incentivise car companies to bring those cleaner and cheaper cars to Australia. If they want to keep selling big, popular utes, they're going to have to sell many more efficient cars to offset them. And what about those big, popular utes? There's no doubt they're popular. The Ford Ranger, Toyota Hilux and Isuzu D-Max were the top-selling cars in Australia last year.
The biggest change to our transport sector since we got rid of the horse and cart.
The government's proposing a new family car and ute tax.
Peter Dutton and the Coalition insist this policy will drive up the cost of a new ute. The Labor government says that's not going to happen. So who was right? That question was put directly to Toyota's CEO, Matt Callahor.
There still remains a significant challenge as we look ahead. Australia is an extremely competitive marketplace in which we exist, and you cannot afford to be mispriced, otherwise you're basically not going very well at all.
Some in the EV industry also pour a bit of cold water on the Australian love affair with utes. They point out that while utes make up 20% of the new car market, that leaves 80% for everything else. And they argue those sales are inflated by some generous tax perks that push people into buying bigger cars they might not need. Finally, they say Australians can have both a big ute and an EV, pointing to a whole fleet of electric utes available abroad. They hope this policy might bring to Australia. The future is electric. How quickly we get there is up to Australian buyers.